Cimoooooooo! What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. Now today I wanted to bring you a video discussing how to beat Majespecters with this crazy diverse format that we're currently in. Now that Ties of the Brethren has come out, you know, Majespecters have kind of been topping a lot more regionals more often than not, and for good reason, because the deck is fairly strong. It runs a lot of very strong back row, and with the pendulum mechanic, this pendulum summon out their monsters to keep recurring more advantage just to stun your opponent, the deck is fairly solid, and it's been taking use of cards like Card of Demise, now Ties of the Brethren, which just furthers the deck even more, so Majespecters are becoming more and more of a problem, and the deck can be very difficult to deal with. While the monsters are very little and very easy to attack over, they have all their spells and traps, which are very disruptive for you, and on top of that, they can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects. So I figured that'd be a cool idea to make this video. The other reason, too, that I wanted to is back during the Monarch format, before Monarchs got hit on the ban list, everyone was citing Mask of Restrict for Monarchs. But now that Monarchs are no longer being played, people have taken those Masks of Restrict out of their side deck. The interesting thing was about that is that Mask of Restrict actually dueled as a side deck option for Majespecters, because Majespecters need to be tributed for their spells and trap cards to actually function. So it was kind of cool that people kind of had already this secondary card, or rather a secondary option, you know, for Mask of Restrict other than Monarch. So Majespecter wasn't too big of a deal because you already had that option in your side deck. But now, your side deck options are a little bit different, as well as main deck options, and we're going to go over some of those today. So, I wanted to break this down into two categories. The first category is going to be going after the monsters themselves, and the second category is going to be going after the spells and traps. So let's start with the monsters. The monsters, like I said, are very easy to attack over, but the biggest problem is that since they can be pendulum summoned, they're going to always be triggering their effects to be able to keep searching more spells and traps. So, some of the best cards you can use to counteract this strategy is to use cards like Skill Drain to be able to negate all of their effects so that they can't get their searches, and then your opponent's just going to have a field of a bunch of little monsters that you can easily run over. Lector Pendulum also serves the same purpose as Skill Drain in this instance. Difference is, Lector Pendulum's at 3 and Skill Drain's at 1, so you can run 4 copies if your deck is really posing a problem to you. So not only that, you also can go after the search mechanic themselves, and you know, by using cards like Skill Drain and Lector, you are going to be negating that effect for searching, but you're also going to be negating, you know, some of your cards as well if you're using Skill Drain. So if you go after the search itself, that's another way that you can kind of go after it. So cards like Mistake, cards like Mistaken Arrest, Thunder King Ryo, things that prevent your opponent from searching cards and adding cards from deck to hand is really valuable because, again, it serves the same purpose as Skill Drain or as Lector Pendulum by negating their effects and not letting them add those cards to their hand, because the whole way Majespecters keep themselves in the game with tempo is that they're stopping your plays and then recurring their monsters to add more spells and traps to pretty much do it again turn after turn after turn. So going after the search or negating the effects as a whole is really, really key. Now, another way you can go after the monsters as well is you can actually alter and modulate the types and attributes of the Majespecters so that they can't actually fulfill the purpose of the spells and trap cards. The spells and trap cards require a winged spellcaster type monster to be tributed to activate their effects. So if you use a card like Zombie World or a card like DNA Surgery, you can actually modify the type and or attribute of the cards themselves so that your opponent can't use their Tornado, their Tempest, their Cyclone, anything like that. They're going to be dead because they're no longer going to be of wind attribute, or they're no longer going to be of spellcaster typing. So that's another cool little trick as well. Now, the other big part is the spells and traps, because the biggest issue is if Majespecters go first, they're going to have a field of anywhere from like 1 to 3 monsters, and then probably 3 to 5 back row, more likely than not. So the biggest problem is the back row at that point, because you have to prioritize and play around, you know, things like Tempest, which is basically Solemn Strike, Tornado, and all these other different cards that they could have possibly in their back row. Now, a lot of us are already playing Twin Twister because Twin Twister is pretty much the quintessential back row removal card at the moment. So if you already have these in your side deck, Twin Twisters coming in games 2 and 3 is very, very good. There are some other options you can go for as well. Denko Sekka is incredibly good against Majespecters because they can't activate anything the second Denko hits the board, so they're going to have immediately 5 dead cards in their back row. And if they have 5 cards, that also means they can't set any more or activate anything else as well. So that's pretty neat to note too. So Denko Sekka, we've talked about Twin Twister. There's also Royal Decree and Trap Stun if you just want to pretty much shut down the traps altogether. The spells aren't too big of a deal, things like Cyclone and Storm and things like that. It's more so Tempest and Tornado that are the bigger issues. So if you want to go after using cards like Trap Stun or like Royal Decree can pretty much shut them down entirely, because if they don't have an out for it, those cards are just going to be sitting there in their back row indefinitely. You also have a card like Full House, but Full House is more situational, simply because they either need to have Pendulum Scales or the field spell active as well. Majespecters don't traditionally play Floodgates. They might play something like Rivalry of Warlords game 2 or 3 depending on the matchup, but primarily their cards are just one-time use and then they're going to hit the grave. So Full House is a little bit more situational in that case. I would prefer something like Denko Sekka or Royal Decree over it, but Full House also does have other purpose against other Demise decks as well, so that's something to keep in mind too. Last but not least, I wanted to talk about Malevolent Catastrophe, because this card's pretty cool too. Pretty much if your opponent attacks you, you can flip up Malevolent Catastrophe and it heavy storms the field. So they're going to lose all 5 cards, even their Pendulum Scales, even the field spell potentially. So that could be pretty fucking crazy if they run right into that. And a lot of people aren't going to expect something like Malevolent Catastrophe. Thing is, it is a trap, so it's a little bit slower, but it's still a good card nonetheless. And like I said, going along the lines of Twin Twisters, you still have things like MST, you have things like Cosmic Cyclone as well that are in the game. Any just basically spot spell and trap removal is really strong against the deck, because you need to just cut off those resources and be able to just keep attacking over their board. Because the biggest way you win against Majespecters is creating an overwhelming board, because Majespecters really struggle to come back from behind, because their whole game is to set up and then disrupt your plays and continue to keep setting up over and over again, as I previously mentioned. So if you create a very strong board, all of their cards like Tempest, Tornado, and things like that aren't going to be nearly as effective, because they're playing from behind, pretty much playing to your game at that point. So that's how you can take control of the game and ensure that you beat Majespecters. So that's going to be it for the video. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think are your favorite options against Majespecters. I know there's plenty more than the ones I mentioned, but these are just my personal favorite and what I feel are the most effective. So thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next time. Cimoooooooo!